Okay, here we go. Books open, pens out, ready to go. I'm not going to read this whole thing because we're going to go through it bit by bit, and it's going to that would take a while. We are still on the Last Supper, and we'll talk through a little bit from yesterday, but mostly we're going to take new ground. So this is John 13:1. Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. And this is kind of setting us up for him to wash their feet. He's going to show them love in a way that most people would never want to do. So we talked about the Passover, but we're going to get beyond that. By the way, I didn't have written down yesterday all of the plagues. So the plagues were the Nile turns to blood, frogs, gnats, flies, livestock die, the first, and then boils. Whew. You know what a boil is?
Yes.
They hurt. Hail, locusts, darkness, and then the death of the firstborn. We're going to start with Christ's humility. So Jesus is having the Passover supper with his disciples, and he institutes the Lord's Supper, what we call communion. Most of us call it communion. But he's also going to do something that would have been seen as astonishing. That he's going to wash the feet of his disciples. And I told you yesterday, there is no other story anywhere in ancient literature where a person who is positionally higher washes the feet of someone who is lower. It was literally unheard of. But that is exactly what Jesus does. And what he's showing them is that because they are going to become the leaders of the church, and he's showing, when he says at the end, you go and do likewise, right? So he's showing them what kind of leader he wants his disciples to be, those who love and care for one another. And he comes to, and we see his heart as well, his heart for his disciples, his compassion toward Judas. And he says, after saying these things, Jesus was troubled in spirit and testified, truly, truly, I say to you, one of you will betray me. And when he said that, the disciples started saying, is it me? Is it me? Is it me? It was like they didn't know if they could or could not betray Jesus. Hi.
Can I ask you a question? Kevin is working on his test for 1.5 periods, working really hard in my room because he's wanting it all just perfect. Mm-hmm. But I'm keeping him from Spanish. Do you mind if tomorrow's walkathon, if he finishes it Monday? He's worked very hard, but he's trying to write very long, thorough essays. That's okay. He was like, well, will she care? I don't think so, no. Especially if I tell you you've been working really hard on it for 1.5 periods.
Yeah, it's a sneakily hard.
Well, and he's trying to be thorough, which I appreciate. So,
thank you. Okay. Yeah. So he knows that Judas is going to betray him, but he even honors Judas by giving him the sop. You were to give that piece of the sop to the most honored guest. He chose Judas, knowing what Judas would do. When I was young, or a young mother, my favorite book about raising children was called Shepherding a Child's Heart. And it was different than most of the other books I read. And one of the things it said in there is that that you have to get to the heart. Because what most parents do is they just deal with the behavior. Stop it. Don't do that. Go to your room. But no behavior comes forth uncaused. It comes out of our hearts. And so if you don't get to the heart, you don't get to the crux of the problem. And that's true here too. Jesus knows their hearts, and he is addressing their hearts, and especially he's addressing Judas in this. And Jesus even lets Judas know that he knows what he is going to do. What you are about to do quickly. And the disciples were clueless. He thought that he was going to get provisions, but he wasn't. He was going to go to the Pharisees and tell them where they could find Jesus. And then Jesus knows his own identity. He knows who he is. He knows what's going to happen. And he is not afraid of that. So when they're in the upper room, he starts washing their feet, which I told you is unheard of. This is the only place in all ancient literature that we see this happening. And only a slave could wash someone's feet. And in some cases, they didn't even allow Jewish slaves to do it. It had to be a Gentile Jew or Gentile slave that would wash feet. So that's the reason for Peter and all of them. I think all of them were like, "What?" But Peter was the spokesman, and he's the only one that stood up or spoke up. And he said, "You will never wash my feet." And then Jesus says, "Well, if you don't want, if I do not wash you, you have no share with me." Well, that made him sad. So then he said something like, "Well, then just give me a whole bath." And Jesus said, "No, you don't have to go that far." So, never wash my feet. Don't only wash my feet, right? Wash all of me. And then he says, "Lord, why can I not follow you?" So he says, "I'm going away and you can't follow me." And that really distressed the disciples. And Peter, I can see Peter, and he's like, "What do you mean you're going away? Why do you mean I can't go? I've been going where you go for 3 years. Why would you not let me go with you now?" And I know in his head it was just spinning and saying, "This can't be." And then he says, "Lord, why can I follow you? I will lay down my life for you." And Jesus says, "Will you? Really? Because before this night ends, you're going to deny me 3 times." Peter thought it wasn't possible. But Peter had what I call foot and mouth disease. He opened his mouth before he engaged his brain, and I can understand that. So, and I think he's in shock. I think they're all in shock. And then he says, "I'll lay down my life," which he will eventually. But we're not too different from Peter, are we? Or at least I'm not too different from that. We often profess more faith than we actually live out. And I think that's Peter. And I think that's people in general. So when Jesus says this, the disciples are upset, and so this is the insecurity of them. So the disciples looked at one another, uncertain of whom he spoke, like who was going to betray him. And they didn't understand what Jesus was talking about. And they keep saying ignorance, but I don't think they could have understood. And they're hard on Peter, but I have a different take on that. So Jesus has said that he was going away, and they couldn't follow. And the way I picture Peter is that in his head he's going, no, this isn't right. No, why would he leave us now? And where's he going? And why can't I go with him? And in that time that he's thinking that, Jesus has gone on to the next conversation. Love one another. And love one another as I have loved you. I don't think Peter heard any of that, because he blurts out, why can't I go with you? And he just didn't understand. Misunderstanding, yet again. And if someone you love just suddenly said, I'm going to leave, like leave, and didn't really give you any warning, you'd probably be upset too, wouldn't you? And to make it worse, he said, and you can't follow me. And Peter's like, why can't I follow you? I'll go wherever you go. He didn't understand. But of course he was upset. But he just didn't get it yet. He will. And then the last thing here says the disciples' complete failure. Again, I think that's harsh. Really quick. Because I'm not going to be hard on Peter and the other disciples. They had no framework to understand a dying Messiah. A Messiah was supposed to conquer, not die. They thought Jesus was going to restore the kingdom of Israel right away. So why would they leave him? And why couldn't they go with him? It was all very troubling to them. And they didn't understand. And truthfully, they couldn't understand yet. And that night, all but one would flee into the night. One would deny him. One would betray him. And the rest would flee. Only John was at the foot of the cross. The others were in hiding. But things are going to change quickly after this. So my question for you, and this is a challenge for you and for me. So I'm going to address myself and you. Are you willing to follow Jesus no matter the cost? I believe we need to make our minds up now what we would do if we were forced to be imprisoned or be martyred for him. That we have to make our minds up now, because making that decision in that moment usually doesn't end up. So that is the end of chapter 28. We'll start chapter 29. You can turn to that in your book.